Welcome. Be sure to like and subscribe for more scary stories, or I will come for you. A reminder that all stories are available on my podcast. The Curator Dark Web Horror Anthology is available on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Without further ado, today's story, 450, by The Curator. I'm going to tell this the way it happened, in the order it happened, with the same stupid confidence I had at the start, because that confidence is the only honest explanation for why I'm still breathing. I'm not posting this for sympathy. I'm posting it because if anything happens to me, I want a record somewhere that cannot be revised into something tidier. A record that does not get packaged into a headline, stripped down into true crime content, and fed back to people as entertainment. Also, because there is a part of me that keeps checking the shadows in my apartment like they are capable of holding receipts. 3 months ago, I agreed to interview a man who called himself FourFifty. He claimed responsibility for 450 deaths. And before you roll your eyes, before you do the internet thing where everything is a performance and everyone is lying, understand this. I verified 12. 12 was enough. Not because 12 is a small number, not because it is only 12. Because 12 is a doorway. And once you find a doorway that opens, you start seeing all the doors you never noticed. This began, like most modern disasters begin, with a notification. 2:14 in the morning. My encrypted tip line. A thing I set up years ago back when I still believed my work could move something heavier than a comment section. Lit up with a new message. Short, clean, written like an internal memo. You want a story that matters. I want someone competent. 450. I will give you structure, motive, and method. You will give me accuracy. Attached were 3 files. Not links, not screenshots. Actual case documents, formatted like something pulled from a system that was not meant to be copied. Incident reports. Coroner's notations. A handful of pages that looked like they had been scanned in a hurry, but not carelessly, like someone had been moving fast, not sloppy. At first, I thought it was a role play. A bored cop, a maladjusted forum freak with a scanner and an imagination. The kind of person who reads one Wikipedia page on serial killers and suddenly thinks they can cosplay depravity. Then I started reading. There were details in those files that were not in any article. Not in any podcast transcript. Not in any Freedom of Information dump. A very specific phrasing in a witness statement. A discrepancy in a timeline down to the minute. A description of a ligature pattern that I remembered because I had once argued with an editor about whether it was too clinical to include in print. I stared at that paragraph until my eyes went fuzzy. Then I did what I had not done in years. I called an old contact. He used to work homicide. He is not a friend. He is the kind of person you only call when you are prepared to owe them something. It was late. He answered anyway. He sounded like he had been asleep, which meant he had been drinking. I did not tell him everything. I kept it vague. I described one case. Then I described the pattern. There was a pause on the line so long I thought he had hung up. Then he said, quiet and flat, "Where did you get that?" I did not answer. He did not press. That is how I knew he was scared. Because when someone in that world goes quiet, it means they are calculating what you could do to them without meaning to. He just said that wasn't released. That was never released. When I hung up, my apartment felt smaller, like the walls had shifted in while I was on the phone. I went back to the message. Read it again and again, the way you reread a threat because you think repetition might change the meaning. It did not. A second message arrived an hour later, like he had been waiting for me to take the bait. Rules. Then, 1. You address me as FourFifty. 2. You do not ask for my real name. 3. You do not interrupt during a narrative sequence. 4. You may ask clarifying questions only after I signal completion. 5. If you attempt to trace or triangulate my connection, the interview ends permanently. And then, like a signature line, I am currently in a depressive phase. That makes me reflective. Reflection is educational. That last part made my skin crawl more than the rest because it was the first glimpse of what this actually was. Not an interview request, not a confession, but a transaction. He was not pleading to be understood. He was offering to teach. And I, God help me, was flattered. I used to be a serious journalist. I do not mean I once had a press badge and a decent social media following. I mean, I spent my 30s on the edges of places people were trying to forget. War correspondence, organized crime, long-form investigations that involved real risk and real consequence, not just screenshots and outrage. Back then, I could get an editor to give me 8,000 words and let me build a story slowly. I could chase a thread for months and then publish something that made a politician squirm or a department change policy. Then the industry rotted. Readership died. Attention spans shrank. Editors started asking me to tighten it up like reality should fit into a carousel. I watched my byline drift from front pages to the digital basement. Watched younger writers with better hair and better search engine optimization learn to speak in the dead language of engagement. I was 42 and pitching stories no one wanted. So when this message came, when someone in the dark offered me something that felt like the old weight of truth, I did not stop to ask why it was being offered so neatly. I just said yes. He told me how we would connect. A rotating onion link. Audio only. No video. No names. No casual conversation. We would meet in sessions. The first time I clicked in, my laptop fan whining in the silence of my apartment, I felt a ridiculous surge of adrenaline, like I was about to step into some forbidden archive. The screen was black, except for a small window. A timer. A waveform. Then a tone. And a voice. Digitally flattened, like someone had taken the human texture out of it without fully disguising it. Not robotic. Not cartoonishly altered. Just pressed down, like a palm on a throat. It sounded male, but age was slippery. It could have been 35. It could have been 55. The cadence was controlled. Almost polite. The first thing he said was, "Begin intake." I almost laughed, because intake is what you do when you are assessing a patient or booking someone into a system. Intake is what happens to a person, not what they demand. But my mouth was dry, and the laugh stayed in my chest like a swallowed coin. I said, "Why me?" The voice did not hesitate. "Because you once wrote that killers are craftsmen." My spine tightened. He continued, "You criticize journalists for focusing on gore instead of process." I stared at my screen, a stupid reflex, as if my expression could be seen through an audio call. That line, "Killers are craftsmen," was from an opinion piece I had written 12 years ago. A piece I had published under a different column heading, when I was trying to argue that the public obsession with violence was shallow. I had said the people who did these things were not movie monsters. They were meticulous. They had routines. They had architecture. It was a small piece, low readership, forgotten. Except it was not forgotten. You believe violence is narrative-driven, he said. That motive without architecture is meaningless. I did not respond, because every word he said was a hand on a memory. He was not flattering me. He was demonstrating ownership. Then he said, "State your credentials." It took me a second to understand he meant me, that he wanted my resume, like an interviewer. I started, out of habit, in the tidy way. Publications, locations, awards. He corrected dates. He knew which war zone I had entered without official clearance. He knew the name of the fixer I had paid in cash. He knew about my first divorce, and the second. He knew my circulation numbers before my paper downsized and pretended it was a strategy. He ended my introduction for me. Professional decline began 8 years ago. There was no malice in his voice, no taunting, just the calm of someone reading a chart. Then, now we begin. I told myself I was in control. I told myself I was documenting him. I told myself this was an interview. It was not. Session 1, he called mania. You asked how I began, he said. I did not begin with killing. I began with pattern recognition. He spoke like someone recounting a childhood hobby. As a boy, he said, he cataloged people, not in a sentimental way, in a mechanical way. He watched classmates the way you watch traffic to predict collisions. He tracked speech patterns, who hesitated before lying, who laughed to fill space, who mirrored other people's gestures to be liked. He described teachers the same way, which students they favored, how their voices warmed or sharpened depending on who stood in front of them. I felt like I was watching the world from behind glass, he said, and in that moment, his voice almost shifted into something like, not emotion, but a shadow of it, like he was describing an injury he could still press with his tongue. At 19, he said he experienced his first manic episode. I could see connections, he said. Not metaphorical, behavioral mathematics. He began testing strangers. He did not describe it with the giddy cruelty you expect from people who want to shock. He described it like a study. He would speak to someone and steer the conversation, looking for the hinge points, the words or expressions that made them lean in, the topics that made their faces tighten, the kind of questions that made them volunteer private things because they mistook attention for safety. Control was the objective, he said, not death. I asked when death entered the equation. There was a pause, not a dramatic one, a functional one, like he was sorting files. When he spoke again, his tone was lighter, almost amused. Accidents are common when variables are introduced. He described selecting someone already unsteady, isolated, fragile, frayed at the edges. Someone whose life had loose boards. He would embed himself slowly, he said, not like a stalker in a movie, but like a shadow you only notice when it moves out of place. He offered help, structure, small solutions, the kind of things that make a person exhale because they did not realize how tense they were until someone handed them relief. Then he withdrew it, not all at once. That would be obvious. He withdrew it like a tide that makes you step forward without noticing you are losing ground. He described the moment the person realized the stability was gone. There is a moment, he said, voice softer when someone understands they are alone. He did not say it like a confession. He said it like a chef describing the exact second a sauce thickens. "That moment," he said, "is exquisite." I asked, "What happened to the first one?" He answered clinically, "She stopped resisting outcomes." I press because my brain wanted something concrete to hold on to, as if specificity would make it less monstrous. "She did not survive," he said. No flourish, no sensational detail, but his breathing changed, slower, more measured, like he had stepped into a familiar room. "Number one," he said, "an unintentional proof of concept." When the call ended that night, I sat on my couch and realized my hands were shaking, not because I was scared of him in the abstract, because the voice had been too calm, because it felt like sitting across from someone who believed they were doing something elegant. I told myself I would call the police. I did not. I told myself I needed more. Context, proof beyond those 12. And if I am honest, because this is the part I keep circling back to, I told myself I wanted to understand. Session 2 came 4 days later. His voice was faster. "I am elevated," he said. "We will cover progression." He talked about what he called architectural killing. He framed it like he was correcting my assumptions, like he had heard my internal narration and found it amateur. He did not isolate people, he said. He engineered collapses. He described lives like structures with load-bearing pillars: money, reputation, relationships, routine, identity. Remove one pillar and the building tilts. Remove 2 and it cracks. Remove 3 and it does not matter if you never touch the person. They will do the rest themselves. He spoke about social erosion, the slow rot of trust, the way people become unrecognizable to their own friends when enough doubt has been poured into the room. He refused to give me step-by-step details, not because of morality, I think, but because he saw how 2 was vulgar. Like teaching someone to play a symphony by telling them where to put their fingers. Physical acts are crude, he said, compared to destabilization. Then he paused, and something in his breath tightened. But sometimes, he admitted, the physical act is necessary to complete the design. The word complete landed like a click. He talked about scenes like they were set pieces, not gore. Not violence as spectacle, violence as punctuation. He described the preparation with a kind of restrained excitement, like someone describing the satisfaction of a perfectly timed sequence. Entry, exit, clean angles, minimal noise. The kind of pride you would expect from a burglar or a stagehand or an engineer. Precision creates beauty, he said. He laughed once, short and sharp, like a snapped wire. "I once timed myself," he said, "and realized how little time you need to change the direction of a life." I asked if he ever felt guilt. There was silence, and in that silence, I realized I was waiting for him to be human. I was waiting for the part where he flinched or justified or begged. Instead, he said, "Guilt is an ego function. During elevation, there is only clarity." It was the first time I felt something like anger. Not moral outrage. Not righteous fury. Anger at the way he kept talking like my questions were naive, as if I was the child in the room. I asked him about the number, 450. He corrected me. 450 attributed. He said myth-making had inflated his count. He allowed it because legend amplifies fear, but he claimed direct responsibility for just under 300. I remember the way my stomach dropped when he said that, like my body understood the weight before my mind could attach numbers to it. And the rest? I asked. Disciples, he said. My throat tightened. You trained others? I inspired others. He described posting manifestos in obscure forums. Not instructions, philosophy, framing, permission. He said unstable men filled in the gaps. They needed authorization, he said. I provided it. He was not just a killer. He was a seed. After session 2, I could not sleep. Not because I thought he was coming for me. Not yet. Because I kept replaying the idea of disciples. How many people out there were reading something written by a stranger and deciding it was a map? Because I had spent years in journalism believing words could change the world, and suddenly I was hearing proof that words could change it in the worst direction too. Session 3 was when the cracks started. Not in him. In me. He opened with a question. How are you sleeping? I said it was not relevant. He said, you are checking your locks twice nightly. My chest tightened hard enough to hurt. I did not respond, because responding would have meant acknowledging that he was right. He continued, voice calm. You moved your desk closer to the wall yesterday. I stared at the corner of my room, where my desk sat. Closer to the wall. Exactly like he said. Something I had done without thinking, like a frightened animal pressing its back to something solid. I said, how would you know that? He did not answer directly. He described my office layout with unsettling accuracy. Bookshelf placement, the angle of my chair, the cheap lamp I had bought because my last one died, and I did not have the energy to pick something nice. Then he mentioned something that was not visible to anyone unless they had been inside. The hairline crack in your ceiling above the bookshelf, he said. My mouth went dry. You feel observed, he said. This is progress. I felt my anger flare again. Are you near me? He laughed. Fear enhances attention, he said. You are finally listening. That was the first time I truly considered that the interview itself was not the point. That I was being shaped. That my reactions were data. I wanted to end it. I did. I swear to God, I wanted to. But then he said something that pulled me back. The way a hook catches cloth. You have been waiting for a story that matters, he said. Now you have one. Do not waste it. And there it was. The old hunger. The disgusting, familiar hunger of a person who once believed his work was important and now felt the chance to be relevant again. I stayed. Session 4. His voice was flat. This is depressive phase, he said. The energy from the last session was gone. No amusement. No quickened pace. Just a dull, careful steadiness, like someone walking through a house after a storm. Mania feels like divinity, he said. Depression is aftermath. I asked what he meant. He said, that is when I revisit them. Revisit, I repeated, and the word tasted wrong. I review records, he said. I felt my stomach twist. He did not describe violence. He described faces. Transitions, he said, confusion. The moment hope flickers because a person thinks they have found a way out. The way bargaining rises, not as a strategy, but as instinct. They always try to negotiate with fate, he said, as if fate is negotiable. He said the purest moment was the moment of understanding, when they comprehend the architecture. He said it like a priest talking about revelation. I muted my mic for a second and swallowed bile. Then I unmuted, because I was still pretending I was a journalist instead of a participant. At the end of session 4, he asked me, "Why are you still here?" I said, "Because the world deserved to know." He replied, "No, you are here because you are fascinated." I denied it. Too fast. He said, "You once wrote that violence reveals the truth of a person. You wanted to see mine." Then, after a pause that felt deliberate, "And perhaps your own." When the call ended, I sat in my chair and realized my knees were drawn up tight under the desk like I was trying to make myself smaller. I looked at my hands and thought, absurdly, that they looked like someone else's hands. The next day, he sent a file, encrypted, no context, no message, just the file. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Not because I did not want to see it, because I knew that once I did, there would be no pretending I was not complicit. I opened it. It was a short video clip. No explicit violence. No blood. No screams. Just a dim room, lit with a yellowish light that made the air look thick. A chair, and a man sitting in it, blindfolded, breathing like he had been running or crying or both. The camera angle shifted slightly, like someone adjusting their grip, and behind the chair, on the wall, was a pattern of wallpaper. A particular kind of dated floral wallpaper that I recognized so sharply my throat closed. It matched an unsolved case from 5 years ago. A case I had written about extensively. A case where I had speculated publicly that the killer had theatrical tendencies, that they might want an audience, even if the audience came later through reporting. The clip ended before anything happened, but the implication sat in the room with me like a second person. He had read my work. He had responded to it, and suddenly I was not sure if I was documenting him, or if my words had been part of the design all along. I started checking my apartment in a way that makes you feel insane. Not just locks, not just windows. I checked vents. I checked behind the shower curtain like a cliché. I checked my wireless router like I had any real knowledge of what I was looking for. I stood in my kitchen, staring at the little green light on the smoke detector, and wondered if it could be watching me. It is humiliating to admit, but this is where I was. A grown man with a career built on staring into dark places, suddenly afraid of the quiet in his own home. The final scheduled session was supposed to be closure. I told myself it would be the last one, that I would take what I had, package it, bring it to authorities, maybe publish it if I could do so without getting myself sued into dust. When the call connected, he sounded calm, centered, like a person who had returned to baseline. "I am approaching elevation again," he said. "We must conclude." I asked why he chose me. He said, "Because you understand narrative." I wanted to push. I wanted to demand. I wanted to rip through his rules and make him slip. But something about his calm made me careful. Like you do not poke a sleeping animal when you are not sure how hungry it is. Then he said, "The first manifesto I ever posted online was criticized." My mind immediately flipped through memories I had not touched in years. Forums, comment threads. That old era of the internet where anonymity felt like freedom instead of a weapon. He continued, "The critics said the writing lacked structure, that it glorified violence without examining process." My mouth went cold. I did not speak because I suddenly knew where this was going, and speaking would have made it real. "That critic's username," he said softly, "was InkDrinker87. For a second, my brain refused to accept it. Then it did, and my body reacted like I had been hit. Ink Drinker 87 was me. Not my real name. Not even a pseudonym connected to my work. An old anonymous account I had used more than a decade ago, when I still enjoyed arguing online about ethics and storytelling, and the way media turns suffering into spectacle. A handle I had not touched in years. A handle I had forgotten existed. He said, "You shaped the myth. You taught me to refine it." My chest tightened. That's impossible. He did not raise his voice. He did not gloat. He just said, "FourFifty was born the night you told me how to make it believable." Silence flooded the call. Not the quiet of disconnection, the quiet of someone letting a revelation settle into your bones. "You are not interviewing me," he said. "You are auditing your own creation." Then the connection dropped. The screen went black. The waveform disappeared, and I sat there in the glow of my laptop, listening to my own breathing like it belonged to a stranger. For the next 3 days, I did nothing but exist in a fog of dread and nausea. I tried to log into that old account. I could not remember the email. I could not remember the password. I could not even remember what site it had been on until I started searching old bookmarks like an archaeologist digging through shame. My hands kept hovering over my phone, over the emergency number, over old contacts. And every time I imagined calling the police, I pictured the questions. How did you contact him? What did you say? Why did you not report this earlier? Do you have proof you did not assist him? Do you have proof you are not involved? I know how systems work. I know how narratives get built around whoever is easiest to blame. And I knew, because he had just told me, he understood narrative too. On the third day, the final message arrived. One line. The number is about to change. Attached was a screenshot of a forum post draft. Username, FourFifty. Title, 451. But the author field had been modified. It read, Ink Drinker 87. My hands went numb. I stared at it until my eyes ached. I refreshed my tip line like an idiot, as if refreshing could turn a nightmare into a misunderstanding. Nothing else came. That night, I did not sleep at all. I sat on my couch with the lights on, scrolling through old drafts of my own writing, like I was searching for a confession hidden in my own sentences. I found the opinion piece again. The one he had quoted. The one where I had said killers are craftsmen. The one where I had begged other journalists to stop fetishizing gore and start examining process. At the time, I had believed I was doing something righteous, something clarifying. Now I was reading it like it was a blueprint I had accidentally left on a table. And here is the part that I hate the most. The part that makes me want to delete this whole post and crawl into a hole. When I read it, a small, sick part of my brain began editing. Not because I wanted to hurt anyone. Because my mind is trained to look for structure. Because my mind has spent decades shaping chaos into narrative. Because somewhere along the line, I forgot that making something coherent can also make it contagious. I kept thinking, if I rewrote it now, I would do it differently. I would make the warning sharper. I would make it harder to romanticize. I would make it harder for someone like him to use. And then, like a punchline from the universe, I realized that even that thought is dangerous. Because harder to romanticize is still thinking like a storyteller. Still thinking about impact. Still thinking about how to make something land. And that is exactly what he wanted. Not my fear. Not my obedience. My attention. My refinement. my participation. So I am posting this. Not because it will save me. Not because I think the internet is a safe place to leave evidence. But because if something shows up, if 451 appears somewhere with my old handle attached, I want there to be context that predates the framing. I want there to be a trail that shows I saw it coming, that I did not wake up one day and decide to become a monster. I have not contacted authorities. I do not know what I would say without making myself look like a collaborator or an accomplice or a fool. And maybe that is exactly the trap. Maybe my silence is part of the architecture too. All I know is this. When I close my eyes, I hear his voice describing design like it is art. And sometimes, late at night, when the apartment is too quiet and my brain starts doing what it always does, building, structuring, narrating, I catch myself wondering how I would structure it better. If this post disappears, remember the username, because if 451 appears online, it will not be him. It will be me, or it will be someone wearing my name like a mask, and I do not know which is worse. This is the Curator. I hope you've enjoyed today's scary story. Until next time.